Have you ever wondered how the minimum wage affects the lives of millions of Indian workers? This question holds weight, especially when you consider the vast number of individuals who rely on this wage as their primary income. It's a lifeline for many, but is it enough? The concept of the minimum wage is a cornerstone of labor rights. It sets the lowest pay that an employer can legally offer their workers. This wage is crucial for the workforce as it ensures their basic needs are met. But is the current minimum wage in India sufficient to meet the rising cost of living and inflation? That's the question currently being asked by the central government as they consider adopting a mandatory national minimum wage hike. This potential change could dramatically impact the lives of hundreds of millions of workers across the country. Today, we delve into the establishment of an expert committee, its progress, and the expected outcome regarding the minimum wage in India. In 2021, an expert committee led by S.P. Mukherjee was established with a mandate until June 2024. This committee was formed with a significant purpose: to reconsider the national minimum wage. Its mission is to set a new floor wage that would be mandatory across all states, reflecting the rising cost of living and inflation and ensuring a minimum standard of living for workers. This committee has been working diligently over the past 3 years, dissecting the complex issue of minimum wage policy from all angles. They've been examining the current Rs. 176 per day rate, last revised in 2017, and how it impacts the approximately 500 million workers, 90% of whom are in the unorganized sector. They've been considering the previous Rs. 375 per day proposal, which was rejected due to substantial financial implications for employers. The task is not easy, but the committee has been steadfast, striving to strike a balance that would be acceptable to both workers and employers, to both central and state governments. They've been grappling with the challenge of setting a wage that would be fair, yet feasible, that would uphold the dignity of labor without placing undue burden on employers. And now, sources tell us that the committee is on the verge of submitting its report. The report is nearly complete, with the committee expected to finalize it after one last round of meetings, they say. The anticipation is palpable. The stakes are high. This report could potentially redefine the lives of 500 million workers and reshape the economic landscape of the nation. The committee is likely to consider inflation and household expenditure costs in determining the new floor wage, taking into account nutritional and non-food requirements. This consideration is a testimony to the committee's commitment to ensuring that the new floor wage is not just about numbers on a paper, but about a worker's minimum living standards. The committee stands on the precipice of a decision that could impact 500 million Indian workers. This is more than just a policy decision. It's about fairness, it's about dignity, it's about the future of work in India. At present, the floor wage in India stands at Rs. 176 per day. This rate has been static since 2017, and it's not statutorily binding for states. This means that the minimum wage can vary drastically from one region to another, leading to disparities and a lack of uniformity. The country's workforce is substantial, with around 500 million workers. This vast number includes a significant proportion, 90% in fact, who are employed in the unorganized sector. These workers, the backbone of the economy, are the ones who often bear the brunt of wage disparities and the rising cost of living. Imagine, for a moment, living on Rs. 176 per day. For many, this is reality. A reality made increasingly difficult with the escalating cost of living and inflation. The price of basic necessities, food, shelter, healthcare, education, all these have witnessed a steady increase over the years. Yet the floor wage has remained unchanged since 2017. A wage that was sufficient back then may not be enough now. It's a struggle, a daily challenge for survival. The need for a revision of this floor wage is becoming more and more apparent. It's not just about ensuring a fair wage for the workers, it's about acknowledging the rising living costs and the inflation that has been chipping away at the value of this wage. It's about making sure that the workers, who are an integral part of the country's economic engine, are not left behind in the race towards progress. And then there's the Code on Wages, 2019, a legislation that empowers the central government to establish a floor wage based on a worker's minimum living standards. This code, if effectively implemented, could pave the way for a mandatory minimum wage that's uniform across states. A wage that could potentially bridge the gap between the varying regional wages and ensure a standard of living that's not just basic but decent and dignified. It's clear that a revision of the floor wage is long overdue, and with the central government considering a hike, there is hope. Hope for a future where the workforce is not just employed, but employed at a fair wage. The proposed new minimum wage could be a game changer. We're looking at a shift that could potentially redefine the financial landscape for millions of workers across the country. The significance of this proposition lies not just in the numbers, but also in the broad sweep of its enforcement. Unlike the current floor wage, this proposed minimum wage wouldn't be a mere suggestion. Instead, it would be a mandatory requirement across all states, thereby ensuring a standardized baseline for wages nationwide. Now, you might be wondering, how is such a nationwide enforcement possible? Well, enter the Code on Wages 2019. This piece of legislation empowers the central government with the authority to establish the floor wage. In essence, it provides the legal backbone necessary to implement the proposed new minimum wage. The Code on Wages 2019 is, therefore, a crucial player in the unfolding drama of wage revision. And the stage for this drama is vast, encompassing approximately 500 million workers. A staggering 90% of these workers belong to the unorganized sector, making the impact of a mandatory minimum wage all the more significant. The proposed wage revision is not just about numbers on a paycheck. It is about the living standards of millions of individuals and families, about their ability to keep up with the rising cost of living and inflation. The central government's authority, as granted by the Code on Wages 2019, also extends to setting different floor wages for various geographical areas. This flexibility could prove beneficial in addressing regional differences in living costs. However, it's worth noting that the code prohibits reducing wages if the minimum rates set by the appropriate government exceed the existing floor wage. In a country where wage disparities have long been a matter of concern, a mandatory national minimum wage could be the first step towards bridging the gap. It's a move that could bring about a more equitable distribution of wealth and ultimately contribute to a stronger, more balanced economy. A mandatory national minimum wage could bridge the wage disparity gap across states. Finding the right balance is key. Now, let's delve into the heart of the matter. The committee's challenge is to strike a delicate equilibrium between the current floor wage and the previously proposed floor wage. This balance is not merely about numbers, it's about ensuring the sustainability of businesses while improving the living standards of millions of workers. The existing floor wage is 176 rupees per day, a figure that was last revised in 2017. On the other hand, an earlier committee led by Anup Satpathy suggested a floor wage of 375 rupees per day in 2019. However, this recommendation was not adopted due to the significant financial implications for employers. Fast forward to today, the committee led by SP Mukherjee is expected to land somewhere between these two figures. The goal is to find a balanced wage that minimizes financial burdens on employers, including both central and state governments, while also ensuring a fair wage for workers. In finding this balance, the committee is likely to consider a range of factors. Inflation and household expenditure costs will play a significant role in determining the new floor wage. The committee will also take into account both nutritional and non-food requirements, reflecting a comprehensive understanding of a worker's minimum living standards. Another aspect to consider is the geographical diversity of India. The Code on Wages 2019 allows for different floor wages for various geographical areas. This flexibility could help accommodate regional variations in the cost of living and economic conditions, further fine-tuning the balance. As we approach the upcoming general elections scheduled for April-May this year, the committee's recommendation could be a game changer. The proposed new minimum wage, if implemented, will be mandatory across states, changing the landscape of wages in India. So here we are. caught in a balancing act. On one side, the economic constraints of employers, and on the other, the basic living standards of workers. With the upcoming general elections, the committee's recommendation could be a turning point for India's workforce. Today, we've taken a deep dive into the issue of minimum wage in India. We've explored the significance of the expert committee led by S.P. Mukherjee, established in 2021 with the mandate to review and recommend a new floor wage. We've also examined the present wage scenario with a vast majority of India's 500 million workers, particularly those in the unorganized sector, earning a floor wage last revised in 2017. This current wage, critics argue, fails to keep pace with the rising cost of living and inflation. Furthermore, we've discussed the potential implications of a mandatory national minimum wage, a move that could drastically shift the economic landscape for employers and employees alike. This proposed wage, unlike the current one, would be binding for all states, creating a nationwide standard. As we anticipate the committee's final report, the question remains: will the new minimum wage meet the needs of India's workforce?